Thank you, Jay. I'm going to go ahead and give you a brief introduction to Anonomatic. I'm going to start with a demonstration of our Privacy ETL solution. Privacy ETL is our product that allows you to perform data security and data privacy related transformations as data moves from one place to another or one state to another, say from your transactional database into your Teradata database, from the Teradata back, or even from a user's front-end application to the database itself. It really is anytime you need to apply these transformations, we give you the means to do it. So the dashboard is how you would start off, and you can easily see here what the state of your jobs have been, how well they've been working. If you need to dig into any of them, you absolutely can. Or if you want to see how various jobs are performing over time, then you can do that as well. Now, to start Privacy ETL or to get yourself beginning with it, what you do first is you define your data profiles. A data profile is basically where you house data. Where would Privacy ETL read data from, or where would it write data to? Now, this could be a transactional database, a Teradata database. It could be a cloud service provider, such as S3 buckets. It could be flat files. It could be cloud services, such as the Domo Analytics platform. Really is up to you. Where do you have your data? Now, for each of these, if you use it for a source, you can define any number of different sources. Because this is a database, these are either tables, views, or even straight SQL. And if I go into any of my sources, I can define the schema. Now, a schema is where I have a codeless means to define the transformations that I want to take place. Do I want to polyanonymize the data? Do I want to mask the data? Do I want to encrypt the data? Do I want to transform it in some way that makes it more secure or more available to somebody to get value out of it? Let's go ahead and show you schemas in action. So for that, I'm going to show you an application we use to demonstrate various capabilities of Anonomatic. This is our POC front end. And in this case, I have some data from a database that is highly identified. It's some sample financial services data. It's got customer numbers, their names, emails, lots of stuff, all the way down to including their social security number and a credit card number. Now, this is very sensitive information and things that you would not want to leave in the clear. So I'm going to polyanonymize this data with a schema. Now, let's take a look at that schema. If I open this up and see that it's a redact schema, I can mask data. I can re-identify already de-identified data. I can transform it. I can even change data in a staging table. So I'm applying these changes after they've already been brought in. This is very helpful if you already have tens, hundreds, thousands of ETL jobs, and you simply want to apply the changes before the data goes into your reporting tables. So with this schema, you can see that I've taken the various columns that are in the data that are coming in. They've been classified as what sort of data it is. This particular column is a last name. Now, there's quite a few different data types, PII types that we already account for. And if you track something that we don't natively do, then you can always extend the list. Any of these things with an asterisk are ways that this has been extended. So I can now track these other things by name. Once I've defined what it is, then the next part is, what do I want Anonomatic to do to it for me? So if it is non-PII, as the row number at the top is non-PII, I can just leave it alone. Don't do anything. Read it, send it on, leave it alone. But if it is a direct identifying value, such as a name or a social security number or birthday, I would want to fully redact it. Now, that means that the actual column is removed. What we like to say at Anonomatic is a hacker cannot steal what isn't there. So I can remove the column, but it's still available for you whenever you need it. That is the beauty of polyanonymization. Now I can leave it alone. I can null out the value, as I mentioned with the staging tables. I can even encrypt the data, decrypt something that is encrypted, change the encryption key. You can perform a large number of different types of what we call synthetic masking. This is where we take a real PII value, such as somebody's first name, and we replace it with a synthetic first name so that the data looks real, but the value is different. This is exceptionally useful when you want to use production data for non-production purposes. I can also do more of a legacy type of masking. What people think of today when they think data masking, it is blank out some characters. We can do that for you too. Additionally, if it is a date or if it is a numeric value, then you might want to what we call smooth the value. You want to reduce its addressability. This is very helpful when you want to take data and either make it available for testing or you're going to allow it to be used for some sort of data science and analytics, and you don't need the very specific value, you just need something rounded. Or you can actually create random values, you can smooth them. Basically, in any way that you find that the data value would be useful to you, you can use Anonomatic to perform those transformations. So a lot happens here, and even more can happen in that data schema. But when I run this data through that schema, you see that here's what I had coming in, and this is the result. The items that I had as direct identifiers that I wanted to redact, a first name, a last name, the date of birth, etc., have been completely removed. I've encrypted the credit card number. A lot of folks like the idea of using Anonomatic for PCI compliance, and they definitely want to encrypt it. So there you go. You can encrypt the value. We also tag each row with a unique and consistent identifier that we call a poly ID. The beauty of a poly ID is it can have multiple values in different places so that it's safe to use. And it is unique and consistent for that individual wherever that individual's data is. So you can use this as your primary key or your foreign key in your database and join all the data that you want for that individual. So this is handy, but there are times you want to have that data back. So in this case, I'm going to show you how you can re-identify this data. The schema here is a re-identify schema. And while I have these different values there, what I'm doing is I am reattaching an email address, a first name, a social security number. So I'm able to de-identify data, save it safely without PII, use it, and then re-identify it. Let's take a look at that in action as I use data for a data science operation. Now I have those exact two sets of data, both before it got de-identified and after it was de-identified. And now I'm going to take only the de-identified data and I'm going to use it to generate highly personalized, highly targeted, and individualized offers for the individuals, but without having any risk of exposure of who that individual is. The offers only use polyanonymized data, and so the result only is identified and tagged with a poly ID. So it was completely safe to make this data available to your marketing team and your data scientists. And they didn't have to sign NDAs. And if any of that data got exposed, they didn't have to do any breach notifications because it wasn't identified. So now I'm going to take this data set and I'm going to re-identify it. Oh, let me go ahead and pick a schema first. And so now I have taken this schema and the schema takes this data set and returns or adds back a first name and an email address. That is polyanonymization, being able to de-identify data, store it securely, use it to its full capacity, and then re-identify it when you need it. Now, most folks will have data that already exists, and they can have applications and views and other things that expect these PII values to be there. Anonomatic provides capabilities that you can implement any number of these when you need them, and you don't have to use them if you don't need to. So in this case, we're going to look at that same de-identified data. There's no first name, there's no last name, there's no email address. But I have a query here written with privacy SQL that says I want to get the first name, last name, and email address, as well as the credit card type and the balance. And I want to restrict my query to a customer's last name and a balance type. So I'm pulling data both from Teradata and from Anonomatic, restricting it with data from Teradata and Anonomatic. And so what I do here is I actually run that query and I get back the consolidated results. Anonomatic ran this query concurrently against Teradata and Anonomatic at the same time. Now, this CC name, which is my frumps, well, that is a schema. And that schema had the data that is de-identified, and then it had re-identified values. And I can query based upon any of the values here. Now, some other things that people like to do with Anonomatic is use us for dynamic data masking. Now, this is, as I said, most often when somebody wants to be able to take production data and use it for non-production purposes. So here is our identified data again, and I have a schema. As I look at that schema, it is classified as a mask and place schema. So I'm going to take those very fields and I'm going to change their value. And instead of redacting them, I'm fully masking them. And when I fully mask these values, I can run this through, and instead of having the real member number or the real first name, last name, email address, birthday, etc., I have come up and returned synthetic replacements. These are consistent for that same individual across all number of data sources until you don't want them to be. One way to do this is, let's say you have 5 different sources with this, all for your customers. You can dynamically mask them with consistent synthetic values, and then every week they would be a different synthetic value. And that just simply makes it harder for anyone to try to reverse engineer. The last thing I wanted to show you, because people do ask for this capability, is the ability to encrypt data using column level encryption. Now, you saw me do that with the credit card number a moment ago, but here I'm going to take a schema, and we're looking at the same data. And this schema says I'm going to go through here and I'm going to take the name fields and I'm going to encrypt them. I'm going to use legacy data masking for the email address, leave the gender alone, but I'm going to encrypt some other values. So this is really just kind of mixing and matching the sort of security that I want to apply to this data set. It doesn't all have to be the same. I could redact some of these values, I could null some of these values, I could smooth different values. It's up to you as far as what you need in any given workflow for whatever particular purpose. So when I run that data through, instead of redacting the values, I've now gone ahead and encrypted those. And of course, I can decrypt them. Well, there you go. That's a quick little introduction to some of the capabilities in Anonomatic. We have plenty more, but this is a good introduction for you. All right, back to you, Kelly.